Hello, and welcome to my fifth episode of West Meets East. So, let's talk about money. Now, obviously, money is something that's not exclusive to my topic, but it is something that can cause major problems in all types of relationships, gay, straight, you know, not necessarily interracial. This is a universal problem, and one that I think all couples struggle with at some point in their life, whether they don't have enough money or they're spending too much money or they're not sharing the money equitably. So many different reasons. And of course, this problem is not unique to myself and my husband. So how does it relate to my topic of cultural differences between the East and the West? Well, it does in many ways. Um, as I've mentioned in other episodes, in the West, we money is viewed quite differently. You know, we are a consumeristic or a consumer-driven society. We rely on credit for many things. In fact, we want credit. We struggle to establish good credit ratings, and the only way to establish a credit rating is to develop, some debt. Whether it be through student loans or mortgages or car loans or credit cards. And so in order to achieve a good, credit rating, we have to have records of being able to, handle debt financially responsibly. Debt is not something that's I don't want to say popular, but common in many parts of Asia, especially Southeast Asia. This is not necessarily the case in all countries like Japan and Korea. But in Eastern culture, the need for saving is much more prevalent than it is in Western culture. I've always been under the philosophy that, I work to live and I don't live to work. And the money I make is money I should spend for my own enjoyment. You know, I'm kind of agree with the philosophy that I should die broke. I don't have any kids, so I don't have to save up for, their inheritance. But I know many people with kids who don't even plan to do that as well. So it's just a Western sort of belief that, money is used to spend. In Eastern culture, that's not the case. Money is used to save, and it can also be used for investment, especially the Vietnamese. My husband, as you know, is Vietnamese, and they're really big into investing. But the whole credit system is very, very foreign in Vietnam. Actually, a lot of countries in Southeast Asia. In fact, when Hui first came to the US in 2018, he didn't even know what a credit card was. He sort of understood what a credit card was, but he could not tell the difference between a credit card and a debit card. And that took a lot of explaining because it's just not commonly done in Vietnam. Everything is cash driven. There's a mistrust of banks. If you've been watching the news, justifiably so, in Vietnam. And so everything is done on a cash basis. I remember when we bought our house in Hoi An, the owners did not want us to transfer money through a bank. It all had to be done in cash. And the largest denomination in dong is the equivalent of like $20, $21. And so when we paid for our house, I had to have bags and bags and bags of money that had to be counted individually by the owner to ensure that it was correct. It took hours. So that idea of saving and having money for a rainy day really has caused a lot of issues with my husband and myself. Many, many fights early on in our relationship. One of the biggest is usually what happened at restaurants. I like to go out to eat. It's a Western thing to go out to eat. Of course, going out to eat in Vietnam, you can get a bowl of pho for, $1.30. $1.50 on the street. But in the United States, a good meal, not even a particularly fine meal, is going to cost upwards of $150 to $200. And so when I first brought Hui over in 2018 and we would go out to dinner, I could visibly see it on his face. I would look forward to going out to dinner because I got tired of cooking at home. And he would sit down at the table and open the menu, and, his face would just change. The expression in his face would change. And he basically sucked all the joy out of the experience because he was only focusing on the price. And, he would say, look, what we're paying for this meal is what my family lives on for a whole month in Vietnam. Yes, I understand that. But, that's not the way it is in the United States. I was raised to enjoy going out. I love going out. I love spending money on food. And yeah, even a lot of money. I mean, I've some upwards of $500 to $700 for a meal. Is that ridiculous for many? Probably. It was unheard of for Hui, and it was quite an adjustment and resulted in many, many fights. And he said, we always joke now. He says, if it wasn't for me, you would have no money. And I joked back and said, I was in my 50s when I met you, and I was doing pretty well, and I managed to get that far without your help. So, and I don't spend money, erroneously. I have no credit card debt. I pay off my bills every month. I have managed to save, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to go out and have a good time and spend money that, some would seem or deem to be a waste of time and money. And that's a very different philosophy in the East. And not so much, and I want to stress this, it's not so much in Korea or Japan, both countries that I've been to quite often. In fact, they do believe in credit, and many of them are suffering from some debt problems right now. But in Cambodia or in Laos or in Indonesia or Thailand, countries I've all been to, credit cards are just not used. And money is meant to be saved, and it's meant to be used for the family. It's not meant to be used for personal enjoyment. So if you start to enter into a relationship, dating somebody from Asia, particularly Southeast Asia, be prepared to have some disagreements about how you spend money. All money is considered important, and spending on frivolous things like going out to dinner is deemed to be a waste of time because, they realize that they can cook or something at home for much, much cheaper, and that money can be used for something better. I totally get it. But I can't even tell you how many fights it cost with us in the early days of our relationship. And occasionally, not as often, but, if I want to do something with Hui, because he's bored, and we're stuck at home with nothing to do, I'm like, well, let's go to the movies, or let's go to the mall, but then I see in his eyes, well, those all require money. And I'm like, well, name something that we can do around here that doesn't require money, other than walking in a park or watching TV, So these are dangerous waters that I used to have to tread with, or sail, I should say, with my husband. And I know a lot of couples who have had similar issues about that regarding money. It's just the way it's been perceived, and how people in Southeast Asia were brought up. So anyway, that's just my topic for today. As always, I hope you like what I had to say, or if you didn't like what I had to say, please send me a message, subscribe, like, and share. So have a wonderful day, everybody. On to the next topic in a couple of days. Thanks.